my niggas soldier bangers, live in action. If you adapt and relax, then the fuck you said, I'll be right back with Max then, blasting.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to yet another college football video. Um, Kind of disappointed, not gonna lie. I expected to have this video out about a week ago. I was trying to record, my mic died halfway through, and it just kind of fucked up the whole video. I swear to God, if my mic dies during this one, I don't know. I mean, I'm not gonna break my mic or anything. I would be disappointed, I guess, which is kind of a lame threat, I guess. But anyways, we are back with yet another college football video. This is the final top 25. Well, actually, I guess after the first set of bowl games, I'll make another top 25 to like, but I wonder because obviously some teams are gonna like some teams, a lot of players are not going like they're gonna sit out and opt out of bowl games. So like for example, if Missouri beats Ohio State, but Kyle McCord isn't playing, obviously that would be a great win for Missouri, but you're not beating Ohio State at full. You get what I'm saying? Like, or if Arizona beats Oklahoma without Dylan Gabriel, like it just, I don't know. So this probably will actually be the last top 25. I have a video talking about my 10 favorite bowl matchups. A lot of them are god awful, and I have a big problem with a lot of the bowl matchups. We'll get into that. There's a lot to talk about with this video. It's kind of weird because a lot of the games I'm going to be talking about that did take place took place like 2 weeks ago from the time I'm recording this video, but I watched several of the games. I have a pretty good recollection of most of them. So let's get right into it here. My final, if you want to say, top 25, man. It's been a crazy journey, and let's get straight into it. My number one team in the country after conference championship weekend is Washington. Remember, this was the only team, in my opinion, to get that number one spot from Georgia. And I think it was after they beat Oregon the first time. And here we go. They do it once again. Not only do they beat Oregon, but they reclaim that number one spot, in my opinion. This, man, this matchup, Washington, Oregon, it was the best of the entire year. I know it's kind of unfair because they played twice. Nobody else played twice, but man, back-to-back classics, in my opinion. Both games where each team scored over 30, and it was decided by one possession. Both games, both QBs played well. I mean, very well, honestly. I think Penix and Nix dueled it out, in the Pac-12 championship game. And I do think Penix played slightly better. I think him using his legs to pick up a couple massive first downs is really the difference here. Penix, obviously, due to his injuries, not a guy known for his athleticism, but he was able to pick up a couple big first downs with his legs. Only had one bad play. Same for Penix, or same for Nix, excuse me. And I mean, let's break it down here. The first half, Washington was actually dominant. Like they dominated Oregon in the first half. I thought it was going to be a blowout. I'm sure most other people there did as well. Uh, Washington's defense shut down Oregon for the first several possessions. And if it wasn't for a completely BS pass interference, I usually don't complain about the refs, but there was a pass interference that Oregon got at the before the half that completely killed Washington's momentum defensively. Oregon picked up a touchdown before halftime and then used that momentum to, make it a game in the second half. But it came down to Washington being the more physical team this game. Dylan Johnson with a masterclass. Washington's O-line played great. Jalen McMillan was back for Washington. It completely unlocked their offense. And this might have been the best version of Washington we've seen all year, to be quite frank. I mean, look at what McMillan, Odunze, and Polk combined for. Almost 300 yards combined, 22 catches. And defensively, they didn't get a sack. Okay, they only had one takeaway, but it came at a massive, that was a game-saving interception that Washington's defense had, and they did their job, man. They were shut down in the first half, and they got a big takeaway in the second half. So you can't really complain about that against an Oregon offense who you could argue was the best in the country this year. I probably would give the nod to Washington at this point, but just statistically, I'm sure when I do like my postseason awards and all that, when I talk about the best offenses, Oregon's offense probably is going to be the best statistical offense in the country. So Washington, they didn't shut them down either game, but they held them in the low 30s both times. So that's not to be laughed at. So Washington, undefeated season, wins a Pac-12 championship against the top five team. They beat a top five team twice. Okay, it's the same team, so maybe that kind of affects some people's opinion about it. But You have two top five wins, in my opinion. You're the number one team in the country. This is where things get interesting. And, my rankings, my personal rankings are a lot different than most people. So let's get straight into it. Before we get straight into it, let me clarify what these rankings are about. I say it in every video, but just in case you were not a viewer of the previous videos, this ranking is about the best teams in the country right now. It's about who I think would win if they played each other tomorrow. It's not about what happened in week 1 or week 2. It's not about what I think would happen a month from now. It's about the best teams at this very moment. If they played on a neutral site tomorrow, who I think would win. I think Michigan is the second best team in the country because they have showed me that they're the best defense in the country, and it's not close. JJ McCarthy is a game manager. The Heisman hype he was getting halfway through the season is laughable now in hindsight because 4 straight games against, you could argue, their 4 best teams, he's done just nothing, I think. Now, not to say he hasn't lost them a game, but against Maryland, for example, he was awful. Against Penn State, they didn't even need him. So it's, he played well against Ohio State. That was his best game in that stretch. So give him credit for that. Blake Corum, obviously, this team is a run first team. They pound the rock. Blake Corum in short yardage has been the best running back in the country, 24 touchdowns. That Michigan offensive line has been monstrous at times. But they only ran the ball for 66 yards. Iowa's defense, they made Michigan work for it, honestly. And you could say that I mean, has Michigan scored 30 in this stretch? I don't think they scored 30 against Maryland, Penn State, Ohio State, or Iowa. So they have been just chugging along here. But defensively, I mean, obviously, it would have been more surprising, honestly, if Iowa didn't score 0 against Michigan's defense. So that's as to be expected. But still, give credit where credit's due. 3 sacks, 3 takeaways. Everybody and their mother knew Michigan was going to beat Iowa. This was not even a challenge. That's why they have to get rid of the conference or the division, sorry, in the Big Ten because it's so laughably lopsided. But good win for Michigan, 13-0, undefeated. Somebody has to prove to me that they can beat Michigan. I think Washington has just too much firepower for Michigan to overcome, but I think Michigan's defense gives them the edge over any other team in the country. Alabama at number 3. They just showed me that they beat the number one team in the country, my number one team in the country, for 95% of the season. Jalen Milroe's evolution has been astonishing. To go from the scorn of Alabama fans, they hated Jalen Milroe's guts after the Texas game. They wanted him benched. He got benched, and they realized that Tyler Buckner and Ty Simpson absolutely suck. And then they came crawling back to Jalen Milroe, and he put together a Heisman stretch. From week 3 until right now, well, actually, from week 4 until right now, Jalen Milroe has been one of the 10 best players in the entire country, one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the entire country. He has been amazing, and he has single-handedly won them games against LSU, against Tennessee, against Texas A&M. I won't say he single-handedly won them this game, but he was a factor. I mean, he outplayed Carson Beck, and he didn't turn the ball over, and he led Alabama against a win against the number one team in the country. They ran the ball not very well, but that also takes into account sack yards. So take out sack yards. I say they did run the ball pretty well against Georgia. I think they did control the line of scrimmage. They only allowed 78 rushing yards. They had 2 sacks. They had the biggest takeaway of the entire season by any team, probably. It was a fumble by Georgia. I'll get to it more when we talk about them, but Alabama takeaway. When you win a game by 3 points and you win the turnover battle 1-0, which leads in a touchdown, that's obviously the play of the game. Alabama made it. Congratulations to them. And let me go ahead and clap it up real quick because I was the biggest Alabama hater, biggest Alabama doubter all season. I took the stupid stance that they were washed, that they weren't even going to make I said that they would not even make the SEC championship. And after the loss to Texas, I said that they would be a 9-win team. I am an idiot. I'm a fool. And here they are in the college football playoff, deservingly so, in my opinion. We'll get more about that when we talk about FSU. But Alabama, I think right now is the 3rd best team in the country. I think they have grown tremendously, mainly on the offense. Their defense has been good all season, but this offense went from just struggling against Texas, against USF, against A&M for that matter, to now where it's at, being able to beat Georgia. I thought Georgia was going to win this game by double digits. I'll be perfectly honest with you. So Alabama shocked me, and they absolutely deserve a spot in the college football playoff. Now, moving on to Georgia. What can you say, man? What can you say? Alabama is their kryptonite. I think Georgia's lost like what, 6 games in the last 4 years or something like that. And I think four of them have been to Alabama. I think Alabama has won four out of their last 5 games against Georgia. Let's break this down. This game, Georgia won the national championship 2 years ago against Bama. Alabama won that SEC championship game, though. They won a regular season game against Georgia in Alabama, I believe. I think that was Stetson Bennett's first year as a starter, and then they won the national championship against Georgia several years ago. So I think that's the last 5 times they played. Alabama has won four out of those 5 matchups. So it's just they have Georgia's number. Nothing to be ashamed about. Georgia had won what, 30 games in a row up till this point. But in the small scale, I already mentioned it. Alabama was the more physical team. They controlled the line of scrimmage. And if we're calling a spade, I think most people knew this, but this is the worst Georgia team out of these last 3 years. It's even worse than the team that lost to Alabama in the national championship 5 or 6 years ago. Georgia has simply lost too much talent to the NFL to be replaced in a 2 year straight. It's not it's an excuse, but it is about as good of an excuse as you can get. You just can't replace that much talent in such a short amount of time. They did a great job. I mean, give them an A on the season. They did about everything they could. They were 3 points away from making the college football playoff and potentially getting their revenge against Bama, but that was not in the cards for them. Georgia's defense, I think, played well. They just struggled to bring down Milroe once he escaped the pocket. Carson Beck, I mean, it was the it was the one turnover. It was a jet sweep to a receiver. Beck and the receiver messed up the handoff. Alabama recovered, scored a touchdown. That was the backbreaker. It's tough, Georgia's running backs. I thought Dewan Edwards and Kendall Milton are very good. They're not Zamir White. They're not Kenny McIntosh. They're not obviously Nick Chubb or DeAndre Swift or any of these guys. So Georgia has they need another year to bring up their freshman and sophomore players. They need more experienced players. They need to go in the transfer portal to add some more depth on both sides of the football. And I expect them to come back. And I mean, I'll pick them to win the national championship next year because I think they're just going to be the best team next year. But it wasn't their year. It wasn't their year. Nothing wrong with that. But if I had to pick the four best teams in the country, Georgia would be in my 14 playoff. It's as simple as that. Number 5, we have Oregon. They were my number 4 team in the country. After their loss to Washington, they're still a top 5 team in my opinion. I think they beat Texas. I think they beat Ohio State. I think they beat FSU. Oregon, I think Bo Nix has been. I would make an argument that Bo Nix has been the best quarterback in the country over the last 2 years. I know Drake May was better last year. Caleb was better last year. Jaden Daniels was better this year. But over the last 2 years, I do think Bo Nix has been the best QB in the country. Uh, and a lot of people are going to blame. I've seen so much Bo Nix hate. Honestly, I don't get it. I think some people are still just stuck up on the false idea that he's the same QB now that he was at Auburn. That just couldn't be farther from the truth, guys. I'm sorry. This guy's a first round NFL talent. And keep in mind, a lot of people are harping on the interception he threw in this game. And I'll be the first to say it was a very bad pick. It was uncharacteristic. He was trying to extend the play. He escaped the pocket. He wanted a big play, and he boneheaded decision, threw it right to a defender. Horrible decision. Should have thrown it away. Lived to play another down. A lot of people are going to harp on that, when in reality, Bo Nix had over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and please keep this in mind. Bucky Irving and Troy Franklin, in my opinion, 2 All-American level players. Both guys who I think should be drafted in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft. Both guys who were top 10 at their respective positions this year, without question, in my opinion. Those 2 guys combined for 18 touches, 70 yards, and no touchdowns. I'll tell you this right now. If Dylan Johnson and Rome Odunze combine for 18 touches, 70 yards, and no touchdowns, Washington loses that game too. Okay? If Blake Corum and Roman Wilson combine, well, actually, I think they did combine for that many yards, but you guys see my point. His stars didn't come to play. And you could credit to Washington for shutting these guys down. They did their job magnificently on defense, but I mean, how the hell is a guy supposed to win when his All-American level teammates are not playing up to that caliber? Bo Nix backpack Oregon this game. Let's not get it mistaken. Oregon's defense gave up 34 points. Bucky Irving, Troy Franklin, nowhere to be found. And Bo Nix still put up over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. So I'm not trying to hear all the Bo Nix hate for some reason that is prevalent out there. Oregon played a great game, both games. And the first one they lost on the field goal. This one, their defense couldn't get off the field. And it is what it is. They're still a top 5 team in the country. I think they are the best offense in the country, statistically at least. And they're beating a lot of teams that you don't think they can. If you think Texas is better, you're wrong. If you think FSU is better, you're very wrong. If you think Ohio State's better, you're wrong. Oregon is beating all these teams. Probably easy. Honestly, Texas, I think it would be close, but I still think Oregon would win by at least 7 or 8 points. Any other team in the country, I think Oregon beats them by 10 plus. Honestly, I just think they're that good. They just got, even if they didn't have, I mean, man, the fact they had to play Washington twice, if they just didn't have to play Washington in the regular season, I think they go undefeated. And even a loss to Washington, maybe they are, the first team out or something like that. But it's just so tough, man, because a 2-loss team, people are going to look at Texas and Ohio State and FSU and just automatically think, oh, 2-loss Oregon. There's no way they're better than that. But no, Oregon lost, in my opinion, the best team in the country twice. So it's tough, man. It's tough. And they lost by a combined, 7 points or something? So it sucks for Oregon, man. Texas at 6. In real life, Texas is the 3rd best team in the country, according to the College Football Playoff Committee. I just disagree. And maybe some part of this is me. Maybe I have the Malik Murphy Texas in my mind a little bit too much, where they struggled against Houston and you struggled against Kansas State. But Quinn Ewers, I saw struggle against TCU, even though he didn't have a bad game himself necessarily. But I've seen Texas play down to their level of competition far too much this season, in my opinion. I don't think they're dominant on either side of the ball. You may look and say they're not dominant on offense. They're amazing. They're inconsistent. Maybe with Jonathan Brooks, they'd be considered a dominant offense. I think certainly if they had a healthy Jonathan Brooks right now, a lot of my concerns would be answered. But CJ Baxter, Jaden Blue, they've played well so far. How well will they play against Washington? To be determined. I do think Washington wins that game, but I don't think Texas is one of the 4 best teams in the country, to be honest. I'd put Georgia in there, and I'd even put Oregon in there, which might seem a little crazy, and I wouldn't even be mad. Obviously, I think Texas would deserve it over Oregon, but I just think Oregon's a better team. I think Georgia's a better team easily. So Texas, they're at 6 for me. They beat Oklahoma State. Everybody knew they were going to beat Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State should not have been ranked. I'm sorry. They had a big win over Oklahoma. Refs were involved. I'm not going to harp on that, but it's the truth. Oklahoma State was not a top 20 team or a top 25 team in the country, and they beat the brakes off them. Cool, great for you. We'll see. I do expect it to be a good game between Texas and Washington, but I don't think they're one of the 4 best teams in the country. Ohio State's at 7 for me. And keep in mind, I know Kyle McCord has already transferred by this point, but we're going to be under the pretend assumption that in this hypothetical scenario, every team has their players that have not transferred, if you get what I'm saying. So in this situation, Ohio State has Kyle McCord. They didn't play a game, obviously, but I think Ohio State's defense is top 5 in the country. They have one of, if not the best, wide receivers in the country. They have a dynamic playmaking running back. And I think they have everything to need to beat any team in the country outside of these top 6, including FSU. Pretty simple. If you disagree, I mean, maybe I could understand putting Ohio State at 8th. Any lower than 8th, though, no, actually, no. If you think FSU is beating Ohio State tomorrow, you're smoking crack. But it is what it is. I mean, Ohio State's a 7 for me. I can't spend 5 minutes on every team. It's going to be a 2-hour-long video. But their bowl match against Missouri, I think they're going to lose. Kyle McCord, Devin Brown did not impress me early in the season. I don't even know if Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to play. Maybe he will. But we'll have to see. I do think Missouri wins that game, though. I have Florida State at 8. Before I talk about Florida State specifically, let me give my little rant about the college football playoff. Look, let me start like this. The best decision and the right decision does not always feel the best. It would have felt a lot better, right, for Florida State to make the playoff and Alabama to not make the playoff. A lot of people are saying that it's biased towards Alabama and that Alabama gets in every year regardless of how well they play. Well, Alabama had the best one in the entire country last week against Georgia. They beat the best team in the country. Nobody else can say that. Nobody else in the entire country can say that they beat the number 1 team. Only Alabama. Alabama won, 11 games in a row? Alabama's only loss is to a team in the playoff. And if we're being honest with each other now, take emotions out of it. Does Alabama beat Florida State by 20 or more points? Yes, they do. It's a no-brainer. If Florida State has Jordan Travis, we're not even having this discussion. And I've seen a lot of people say that Florida State, they're making the argument, why even play the games? The games don't matter. Florida State went undefeated. No, 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 no. Jordan Travis and Florida State went undefeated. This team right now is not that same team that beat LSU. It's not that same team that beat Clemson or Duke. This is a team that's put up 40 points in 2 weeks. It's a team that struggles to move the football with Keon Coleman and Trey Benson and Johnny Wilson. If you have those guys and you struggle to move the football, I understand. I understand that the quarterback they had against Louisville would not have been the quarterback that they had in the playoff. Quite frankly, I didn't think he looked that good against Florida. I've had 2 games to watch this offense against Power 5 competition, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good enough, quite frankly. If this was a Cardale Jones situation where the backup came in and he was balling, okay, maybe, put him in for all I care. But that was not the situation. You cannot put in a team who's going to get beat by 50 in the college football playoff just to make people feel good. Florida State's not one of the 4 best teams in the country. They're not one of the 7 best teams in the country. And if I was being a little more harsh about this, I might even have put them outside of my top 10. But I think their defense is so good and they played so good these last 2 weeks that out of respect, I kept Florida State at number 8. But if we're being honest here, if they had to play Missouri tomorrow, I probably am taking Missouri. So keep in mind, just keep that in mind. Do I think they're going to lose by 30 to Georgia? Yes. Do I understand that Florida is going to have a lot of guys not playing? So is Georgia, guys. Okay, let's not pretend here that Georgia is going to be 100% and Florida State is going to be 50%. Again, the key to all of this is that this is not the same Florida team that we've seen for 90% of the season. No Jordan Travis, no playoff. Simple as that. If they did have Jordan Travis, they'd be my number 3 team. It is what it is. It sucks. It's unfortunate, but the arguments people are making are not true. They're trying to make it seem like because it's Alabama and because it's Florida State. No. It's just because Florida State does not have Jordan Travis. It's that simple. People are overthinking this. Missouri at 9 for me. I've liked Missouri all season. They have not played. They didn't play a game, obviously. They have not changed for me in a while. They're still my number 9 team. You can see the stats right there. I'll hurry through these teams that didn't play a championship game. Quickly talk about their bowl game. I love this game. Missouri, one of my favorite teams to watch this year. Getting to play Ohio State for them is huge. I love that opportunity to play a New Year's Six game against a fellow top 10 team. I do think they're going to win, obviously. I mean, with Brady Cook now and with no Kyle McCord, even with Kyle McCord, they would have had the advantage at quarterback. Now they have a massive advantage at quarterback. They have an advantage at running back. And, obviously, Luther Burden is no Marvin Harrison Jr., but he's no slouch. And Marv might not be playing. So we'll see if they have an advantage at quarterback, running back, and receiver. Defensively, obviously, Ohio State, the better defense. You could probably say the better coach team. But again, Missouri is not a slouch. And, if Devin Brown tries to move the ball against Missouri, watch out. I think they're going to make a couple plays on the ball. So I think they're going to beat Ohio State. I think it's going to be a close game, an exciting game. I'll be happy to watch that one live. But yeah, great season for Missouri. I give it an A. Their only 2 losses were against the Heisman and Georgia. So I give Missouri an A, a 9.5 out of 10 for this season. And let's see if they can finish strong with a win over Ohio State. Ole Miss at 10, similar story. Their only 2 losses, Alabama and Georgia. Jackson Dart played well. Quinshon Judkins looked like himself the last 2 months of the season. They spread the ball. They had a lot of talented receivers. And I think their defense, while it started strong, had its weak points against LSU and against Georgia. So, overall, not as impressive as Missouri, but still a very impressive season. I'll give them an A minus, give them a 9 out of 10. And against Penn State, I do think, I would have liked to see Ole Miss versus, an Oregon or who else? Who else could they have played besides maybe Oklahoma instead? But Penn State, again, similar to Missouri, they're getting a top tier team, a fellow. Well, I think actually is Penn State ranked higher than Ole Miss in the actual poll? I'm not sure, but I do think Ole Miss is going to throttle Penn State. To be honest with you, I think Penn State's defense, it's great. Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, they're all top 10 defense in the country. So Ole Miss, I think, is going to struggle to move the ball, But compared to Penn State not moving the ball as they've done against every big game, big team they've played this season. So I think Ole Miss is going to win this game by double digits and put a very strong finish on an impressive season. LSU was at 11 for me. They have been at 11 for a while. They have not changed. Even though they beat Missouri, I do think if they played again, I would give the nod to Missouri right here, right now. Jaden Daniels won the Heisman. He was my pick for Heisman. I thought he deserved it. Just the most impressive player in college football, quite frankly. So that, it should be a no-brainer in situations like that. They ran the ball incredibly well this season, mainly due to Jaden Daniels. And you guys already know about LSU. Great receiving core, bad defense, yada yada. This is one of the most wasted opportunities. And look, maybe Jaden Daniels opts out. I don't think he would, but maybe he does. Maybe Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, maybe they opt out. I don't think they would, maybe they do. But to put LSU, arguably the best offense in the country, the Heisman, to give them a bowl game against Wisconsin is a joke. You had a gold mine here. You had a golden egg in LSU to put them against another top 15 team. I would have loved to see them against Liberty, against Arizona, against Oregon, another top 15 to 20 team, and watch the fireworks go off, watch the magic happen. Instead, you put them against fucking Wisconsin, one of the most boring, irrelevant teams in the whole country. You want to see LSU you want to see the Heisman versus Wisconsin? I don't blame people for opting out. I would opt out of this game. Are you kidding me? We play our hearts out. We only lose to Alabama, Missouri, and FSU, Alabama, Ole Miss, and FSU, all top 10 teams in the country. And you want me to go up and suit up to play fucking Wisconsin? Are you kidding me? I wouldn't play either. So, I mean, they completely wasted. This might have been the most wasted opportunity of any bowl matchup. LSU against Wisconsin is a joke, and they need to get me to make these bowl matchups because, God, you know for damn sure I would not have put the most exciting team in the country against fucking Wisconsin. Oklahoma. Oklahoma finished at 12 for me. Oklahoma proved me wrong this season. I did not expect them to be one of the best teams in the country. I thought they had lost too much talent to the NFL. I didn't know if Dylan Gabriel could stay healthy this year. He did, and he made the talent around him work, mainly because he was one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the country this year. Defensively, they took massive steps. 25 takeaways, 22 points per game allowed. Brent Venables is starting to have a noticeable impact on Oklahoma's defense. And their matchup is Arizona, which is very interesting. I didn't see that coming. I wasn't even thinking about that, but I think this is going to be a pretty exciting game. Obviously, no Dylan Gabriel for Oklahoma. I'll have to make a video just talking about the transfer portal and all the shit that's happened there. But this is a good game. And, Jackson Arnold versus Arizona, I expect damn near everybody to be playing for Arizona. So this is going to be a pretty exciting game. I'm going to be happy and excited to watch this one. So that's a pretty good, I'll for as much shit I just talked about LSU versus Wisconsin, I'll clap it up. This is a pretty good matchup here. Oklahoma versus Arizona. Liberty, undefeated, my number 13 team in the country. They won their conference championship game against New Mexico State. They beat them for the second time this season. Caden Salter has gotten no attention nationally. Quentin Cooley has gotten no attention nationally. This is the best rushing attack in the country. I'll admit, subpar competition. They did not play a ranked opponent this year. Defensively, they have not been as dominant as a James Madison, for example, but they get to play Oregon. Again, pretty interesting. My dream matchup would have been them versus LSU, to be quite honest with you. I thought that would have been, man, Caden Salter versus Jaden Daniels, 2 of the best offenses. I thought that would have been fireworks, but Liberty instead plays Oregon. Obviously, a lot of Oregon fans are mad. And, I don't love that matchup. I think Liberty, they deserve a big bowl game, and I would have put them against an Oklahoma and LSU, Ole Miss, a Missouri, a team like that. But like I said, I think Oregon is a top 5 team in the country, and to put them against Liberty, it's great for Liberty, but not so great for Oregon. And I do think Oregon is going to win this game handily. But if Bo Nix plays, I'll be excited to watch this game, man. Even if he doesn't play, didn't Ty Thompson already enter the transfer portal though? So I don't know, but we'll see. Maybe it'll still be a good game. I hope it is at least. If it is, I'll be there watching it. Notre Dame at 14, they didn't play a game. Penn State at 15. We can talk about these two teams at the same time, to be honest. Both teams greatly disappointed me. Both teams had opportunities to beat teams like Ohio State. Penn State had the opportunity to beat Michigan. Notre Dame had the opportunity to beat Clemson and Louisville and all that. But both teams really were held back by a lackluster offense when it mattered most. Both teams had extremely impressive defenses. One second, one second. Let me see if y'all can still hear me. No, I charged this shit for like 2 hours. How does it only die like halfway through this shit? Whatever. If it dies again, I don't know. Anyways, Notre Dame had great defensive performances against teams like USC, Duke. Penn State had great defensive performances against everybody, really. I mean, they had 49 sacks on the season, 24 takeaways, and they only allowed 11.5 points per game. But, their offenses let them down when they mattered most. Notre Dame against Ohio State, Penn State versus Michigan versus Ohio State. They couldn't move the ball. And both these quarterbacks, Drew Aller statistically looks pretty solid, but he only threw like 200 yards a game. And Sam Hartman could not beat Louisville and fucking Clemson. So both are one and the same, to be honest. I actually like Notre Dame's matchup against Oregon State because they are not going to have a coach or DJU. So I didn't want to see Notre Dame versus a really good team because they didn't deserve it, in my opinion. So I'm glad they play a team like Oregon State so I can just skip over that game and not pay it any attention. That's my selfish opinion because Notre Dame or Oregon State, neither of them deserve to play top, 13 teams in the country. And I don't think either of them are top 13 teams in the country. So it works out for everybody there. And Penn State, I think they're going to lose to Ole Miss handily. Arizona, uh, what a season for Arizona. I was so negative about these last two teams. Let me get a little more positive here. Arizona, nobody was expecting them to be as good as they were and to rack off as many ranked wins. I mean, they beat what? They beat ranked UCLA, ranked Washington State, ranked Oregon State, gave USC a run for their money, uh Washington to run for their money, beat Colorado. Like this was a really, really good season for Arizona. Noah Fafita coming in midway for the injured Jaden Delora. And as a freshman, this is the thing. I thought this guy was like a junior or like a senior, like a guy with a lot of experience that just came in and played. But this guy's a freshman. They just found the future of their program on accident, and he came in and balled out. They ran the ball pretty well. I mean, almost 150 rushing yards a game. And their receiver core, McMillan, Cowing, combining for over 20 touchdowns. They had a stacked receiver room. And defensively, I mean, in the Pac-12, giving up less than 21 points per game, that's pretty damn impressive. And like I said, I think Oklahoma is a great match for them. I think it's going to be an exciting game. And they have a chance to put together a 10-win season here out of nowhere. So congratulations to Arizona. A very, very impressive season for them. Next up, we have SMU at 17 with kind of a miraculous finish, to be honest. I mean, they beat Memphis, they get to the AAC championship, sorry, and they beat Tulane handedly. Keep in mind, without their quarterback, SMU did not have their stud young quarterback, Preston Stone, and said they had to roll out there with Kevin Jennings. He turns the ball over multiple times, and they still win the game because their defense was just that good. It was impressive. I'll be honest with you. They had 6 receivers over 15 yards. If you know SMU, they have like 7 guys with over 300 receiving yards this season. It's nuts. They ran the ball very well, over almost 200 rushing yards. And defensively, they just put on a show, man. This is sneakily one of the best defenses in the country, just statistically. And they had 7 sacks against Tulane. So nobody was talking about this, but SMU pulling off their best season, I think, since the death penalty is just crazy, man. So shout out to SMU. They are a top 17 team in the country. Some of their fans are upset that they didn't get their that they don't get to play in a New Year's Six bowl. I mean, they're a 2-loss team. Liberty's undefeated. I don't really understand what their problem is there. But, a great win nonetheless. Who are they playing? Damn. Fuck. It's been so long since I made this, I forgot who they're playing. I think, let me just flip. It takes no time to actually just look it up. If I remember correctly, I think I was upset at their bowl game. Let's see here. Oh my God, they played. Oh my God, you guys are going to be so upset when you hear this. SMU plays Boston College. Are you fucking kidding me? They play a 6-6 team, guys. They play a team who arguably shouldn't even be in a bowl game. 6-6, that is a tragedy. That might even be worse than LSU versus. Okay, no, it's not worse than LSU versus Wisconsin, but it's right up there, man. That is a horrible bowl match. SMU got screwed by the bowl makers, and I'm offended. I'm not an SMU fan, but if I was, I would be steaming right now. Man, I'd love to see SMU versus James Madison. I'd like to see SMU versus even a Penn State. Um, Give me SMU versus Notre Dame, something like that, man. Fucking Boston College, that's embarrassing, man. I feel so bad for the SMU fans now. Ugh, I just got chills. I just got physical chills from seeing that matchup. They deserve better than that. Poor SMU, pour one out for them. James Madison. Um, it sucks, man. They didn't get to play in the Sun Belt Championship, even though they were the best team in the Sun Belt. To be fair, they lost to App State, who did make the Sun Belt Championship game. But Troy beat App State. James Madison beat Troy. So who's the best? How can Troy be the Sun Belt champions when they lost to a team that had a better record and didn't play in the Sun Belt champ? So in my opinion, I am going to be referring to James Madison as the Sun Belt champion. So congratulations to the Sun Belt champions, James Madison. I'm very happy that they got to play their bowl game. That's the problem, man. Jordan McLeod is already into the transfer portal. Their coach has already left. They get to play Air Force, which isn't too bad. I would like to see a better matchup for them, but they're probably going to lose to Air Force now because I don't think they're going to have their coach or their quarterback. So it sucks, man. I hate that the transfer portal overlaps with the bowl games and shit, but it is what it is. Congrats to James Madison on a great season, though. I mean, it was exciting to watch, and they deserve a good match like Air Force. Oregon State at 19 for me. They didn't play a game. It's really tough to judge how good Oregon State is, man. They lost 4 games. They lost to top 5 Oregon, top 5 Washington. They lost to Arizona. I think they lost to who else they lose to? Washington State as well. Um, Oregon State's not a great team. I think they were overrated the entire season. Them getting into the top 10 and top 12 was kind of just ridiculous to me. I think the highest I had them was like 14 or something. So, I mean, I just didn't trust DJU. And I think, the record kind of shows it. Last year they won 10 games. This season they won 8 games. So I don't think they're going to beat Notre Dame either because, no coach, no quarterback. I just don't think they're going to be motivated enough to pull off a big win there. So I think it's going to be 8-5 for Oregon State, and playing in the Pac-2 next year. Who knows what their future is? But honestly, I don't have a lot of hope for Oregon State moving forward here. Number 20, we got Troy. They beat App State handedly. Troy is a very good team. They struggled early, actually. I think they lost to who they lose to. Can't remember who they lost to, but I think they were like 1-2 to start the season. Then they run off 10 in a row, including a big win over App State. They're the fall Sun Belt champions. Kamani Vidal, he had 5 touchdowns. Yeah, that'll win you a conference championship right there. Chris Lewis was a monster all season, just making ridiculous catches. Defensively, they had 5 sacks, 2 takeaways. Who was their ball man? They played Duke. I don't hate that. But Duke already lost their quarterback and their head coach, so you can already chunk it up as a win for Troy. Troy's going to finish 12-2 this season. Troy has been one of the more dominant programs in the country. I know it's tough to say that about a group of 5 team, but they have. I'm just looking at the records lately. I think it's like 3 straight 10-win seasons for Troy, and this might be the best one out of all of them, to be honest. I mean, I expect them to finish top 20 in the national rankings. So shout out to Troy. Good season. And they're going to finish incredibly strong here. NC State. They didn't play in the conference championship, obviously, but they're coming off a big win versus UNC. And I wrote them off early in the season, to be honest. I think after their loss to Notre Dame, I just didn't really consider them as, one of these top threats in the ACC. But here they are finishing with 9 wins. I think that has to go to their coaching, really. They're always just a good team. I don't know the name of the coach, but it feels like at the end of every year, you got North Carolina State with at least 8 or 9 wins. So shout out to him. Kevin Conception apparently is like one of the best freshmen in the country. And just looking at these stats right here, over 100 touches, 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. Yeah, I'd agree. Defensively, we know NC State, they're known for their defense. Same can be said about this season. They played very well. And their bowl match is Kansas State. I actually like that one. 2 of the top 30 teams in the country, in my opinion. Hard-nosed, winning programs. Kent State will be without their quarterback, I believe, but they have a backup ready to go, I think. So that'll be a good game, to be honest. Not a lot of people are going to pay attention to it, but I'll be interested to see that game. The Wolfpack versus the Wildcats. Louisville loses to Florida State with their third string quarterback. Just a stupid loss from Louisville, to be honest, man. If you can't beat FSU with their third string quarterback, yeah, I just can't have any faith in you. All my concerns about Louisville's offense came to fruition. Jack Plummer did nothing. They couldn't run the ball. They gave up 7. I mean, it was a nothing performance by Louisville offensively. Defensively, they came to play. They did a great job. 4 sacks. Only allowed 16 points, but you can't even score a touchdown in the ACC championship game. That's just embarrassing, man. So Louisville drops to 22 for me, and their bowl game is against USC. They should easily beat USC with no Caleb Williams, no Mario Williams. Yeah, that should be an easy win for Louisville. Finish with 11 wins, so they finished much higher than a lot of people, including me, expected them to, but just didn't win the big games for me. Final group of teams here. I got Tulane with a massive fall off because, man, if you would have told me that they got to play SMU with their backup quarterback, I would have told you Tulane wins by 10 points. And instead they lose by 12 points. So that's, it was an embarrassing finish to Tulane's season. And honestly, you have to think that their head coach had already made up his mind that he was leaving and he was going to go to the Big 12 to coach Houston because in his final game at coaching Tulane, it's just hard to believe that he was given 110% that game. To lose to a team with a backup QB, all credit to SMU, their defense played lights out, but I just have a feeling he had one foot out the door, to be quite honest with you. And that was the type of performance we got from Tulane. Michael Pratt, he had a solid enough game. They couldn't run the ball, and defensively, 3 takeaways. They did their job, but could not capitalize on those. And the end of the season, they're 11-2 actually. I made a typo there. They're 11-2. And who is their bowl game? Do they even deserve a good bowl game? Is the question with how they fumbled the season. Let me make sure here. Tulane plays Virginia Tech. Similar to SMU, the AAC gets no respect. That's a horrible matchup. I don't know why we have 6-6 ACC teams playing AAC teams. I have absolutely no idea. But Tulane actually makes more sense because they fumbled their conference championship, and I think they actually deserve to not play as good of a bowl game as a result. Miami of Ohio wins the MAC championship against Toledo. Their defense was lights out. They did it with a backup quarterback who he had a couple big plays. He didn't score a touchdown, but he had a really big run, threw a couple bombs. They didn't turn it over. They controlled time of possession. They won the turnover battle by 2. They shut down Daquan Finn and Penny Boone and a pretty electric Toledo offense to win their conference championship. So shout out to Miami of Ohio. They play who they play. I don't know. I'm not going to look it up again. But they don't play a very notable bowl game. But they should finish the 12-win season, and they will certainly be in my top 10 group of 5 teams when I make that video eventually. So I will go much more in depth on Miami of Ohio in that video. Tennessee at 25. This was a struggle. I had no idea who to put at 25. Could have put up Kansas State, but I just don't know. Tennessee, man, 8 wins. Nobody really talks about it because of teams like USC and Clemson and Notre Dame, but Tennessee was one of the more disappointing teams this season. A lot of people, man, really had national championship hopes for this team, and it just didn't come to fruition, mainly because their receiving core just did not step up, man. To go from Jalen Hyatt and Brew McCoy and Cedric Tillman, and they didn't have any of those guys the final stretch of the season. Squirrel White, Ramel Keaton, guys like that. It just wasn't enough to beat teams like Missouri and Georgia and fucking what's they lose to? I mean, they lost to Alabama, they lost to Florida. I mean, it's just a really disappointing season for Tennessee, and their defense was so good. Isn't it crazy how the jump Tennessee made from last season to this season defensively is incredible? So they wasted that. Joe Milton, I thought, played well. He just didn't have the receiving core to do much with it. They had a great run game, one of the best in the country, but it just wasn't enough, man. Their receiving core really was just it cost them what, 2 or 3 wins? Embarrassing, man. They deserve to play Iowa. This is funny. I really like that they made Tennessee play Iowa because if you lose 4 games and the way they did to guys like to teams like Florida, you deserve to play Iowa. I'm sorry. So it's going to be a boring game, an awful game. I hope players from both teams opt out, so it's like a 6-3 final score. That would be beautiful because both these teams deserve to play each other as a punishment. But man, that's going to be it. What a fucking long ass video. I have no idea how long this is going to be. Thankfully, I just was able to turn my mic back on halfway through for some reason, but I'm trying to be really consistent with these uploads, guys. I mean, I'm trying to upload every other day. Uh, the lowlights have been back. Y'all been showing that love. I really appreciate that. I'm gonna try and have a community post up every day about something. The mock drafts have been doing incredibly well. Again, thank y'all for that. We're getting close on 150 subscribers, and I don't know, man. I'm grinding. I'm grinding, and I hope y'all appreciate it because I appreciate y'all. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you're new. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and I'll see you very, 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 very soon. See you.
It's out the motherfucking pack. Right out the niggas don't know how to act.